Welcome to the first ever firefighter retirement webinar. For anybody that doesn't know, our firm's called Trustwell Strategies. We're on the north side of Indianapolis, and we're highly specialized in working with firefighter families. So we work with firefighters all over the country doing retirement planning. My background personally is a master's degree in finance with a concentration in retirement planning. And then I'm also on the Indianapolis Fire Department, and this is my partner, Greg Freeman.
Hey guys, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I'm Greg Freeman. I've been a financial planner for almost 15 years. It's hard to believe that, but I've been in this industry, and my dad is an Indianapolis fireman, and then also my brother is too. So he followed in those footsteps. So I've always, had the opportunity to help firemen with their financial planning and retirement planning, but it's also been a part of my life ever since I've been a young kid. So, I've always loved being able to get back to the people that I remember going to the fire station and sliding down the poles when I was a little kid and jumping on the fire truck. So
awesome. We see in the chat there, Rodney, IFT 43, back from a TAC run. So appreciate you guys hopping on shift. Our agenda for tonight, we're going to talk about the 4% rule and how that relates to how much money you should have saved to retire. We're going to be looking at your asset allocation, how much risk you should be taking in your investment accounts. We're going to talk about your asset location, what types of accounts you should be investing in to optimize taxes in retirement. And then we're going to hit on a question we hear commonly of what does it even look like to work with a financial advisor? So we'll hop right into it. It's important to note nothing in this webinar should be considered financial advice. If you've got questions about you and your family, feel free to reach out, and we'll discuss recommendations specific to you. These are a lot of kind of big picture things that we work with our firefighter clients on.
And some housekeeping things. I would take some time, a couple seconds here and go grab pen and paper so that you can write some stuff down. I would also encourage you and challenge you to write down some of the challenges that you think you'll face. Some of the things that we hear right now with clients is how do we deal with market volatility? What's it look like when portfolios are moving up and down, especially when we're in retirement? What's the impact of inflation? What's the impact of rising interest rates? What's going on with the Ukraine and Russia saga that we're hearing a lot about? So there's a lot of uncertainty and unknowns that we're dealing with on a daily basis, and so we'll help you hopefully deal with those and show you how to, especially in retirement, how you're gonna fight those battles that you're gonna face.
So the first thing we're going to go over is called the 4% rule, and this has really become kind of a pillar in retirement planning. It's based off of the now famous researcher, an academic named Bill Bengen, who went back and looked at historical returns all the way back through the Great Depression, and found that you could pull 4% from your retirement nest egg every single year without running out of money. So that's known as a safe withdrawal rate. And so for super simple math, if you have $1 million nest egg, you can pull 40 grand or 4% from that every single year in retirement income, regardless if you retire on the brink of the next Great Depression. Historically speaking, you're not going to run out of money. And in a lot of cases, depending on market returns, you're actually going to pass with more money than you actually retired with. So we're going to give a couple examples of what that looks like specific to our firefighter clients. The most important input to this whole thing is your expenses. How much does it cost to be you? What's your desired retirement income? And so we'll give an example we see commonly of a couple that has a $7,000 monthly lifestyle. Okay, so that's $84,000 a year in retirement income. The first thing we're going to do is back out the pension. So we'll say this couple has earned a $60,000 pension. And we'll say maybe the spouse has a small Social Security benefit. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the windfall elimination provision and the haircut that most firefighters get on their Social Security benefit. We'll say maybe this firefighter's benefit is negligible and their spouse maybe stayed at home for a lot of years but has earned a an $8,000 Social Security benefit. When we back those out, we get what our actual retirement income need is from our nest egg, $16,000. To get to our safe withdrawal rate of 4%, all we need to do is multiply that by 25. And we get a retirement nest egg of $400,000. So 400K supports a $16,000 annual retirement income using a 4% safe withdrawal rate. Another common example we see is perhaps for an early retiree. That's something that's potential for a lot of us to retire at 50 or at 52 and hopefully be retired for that same amount of time, for another 50 years. So something with the 4% rule is it's flexible. Bill Bengen is quoted as saying that maybe a 5% safe withdrawal rate is sustainable. There's some academics that think a 3.5% safe withdrawal rate is more appropriate. But we know it's for a 30-year retirement. But an early retiree that may be retired for 40 or 50 years, let's say we use a 3% safe withdrawal rate. And so I'll give an example of that. If we've got a $6,000 retirement lifestyle, that's $72K a year. And we'll use a smaller pension. Again, maybe for the military retiree, for a fire department with a smaller pension base. We'll call it a $35,000 pension. Once we back that out, that gives us a retirement income need of $37,000. So to back into our 3% safe withdrawal rate, we multiply that by 33, and we find that a $1.2 million nest egg supports $37,000 a year with a 3% safe withdrawal rate. So the math for coming up with how much money you need to retire is totally dependent on your expenses. And it's simple. It's not that complicated to figure out. And especially if you're early in your career, it's pretty easy to project how much you should save each year to wind up with that nest egg when you want to retire. So that's the 4% rule and how it applies to how much money you should have saved for retirement. And now Greg's going to go into your asset allocation. How much risk should you be taking with your investment accounts?
Yeah, so a lot of the times when we talk about risk allocation, we're talking about different buckets of money. So I'm going to talk a little bit about having 3 buckets of money, our strategy. And, an analogy that I like to use, it makes sense to me, is we've all heard about the Titanic, right? So the Titanic was the greatest ship ever built. There's nothing bad that could go with it, go wrong with it. They put the rich of the rich on there, and then we all know what happened. It ran into this iceberg, it started to sink, and the one mistake that they made on the Titanic was they didn't have enough lifeboats on board to get everybody off in case something bad happened. So when we talk to our clients from a financial standpoint, we think it's massively important to have enough lifeboats in your financial plan that no matter what happens, right? Like COVID's happened this year. Now we're dealing with the war. Now we're dealing with the election, midterms and the election coming up, and who knows what's going to happen there. Inflation, interest rates, I can go on and on. I mean, we're starving for good news right now. But if we plan correctly, regardless of any of these things, we'll have enough lifeboats to dip into to be okay. And that's what we're trying to talk about when we're building the 3 buckets of money. So I'm going to use Chris's same example, one that we see often with firefighters. Okay. And so what that is Chris drew my buckets really high here, and I'm short, so that's I'll do my best. So we'll see a retiree, a firefighter retiree, retire with $400,000 a lot of times. Where does that come from? Well, if you're familiar with the drop program is usually deferring 3 years of their income, the pension income, and they get it all in a lump sum, which is about $180,000-ish, okay? That's often something we see. We also might see them have $220,000 inside of retirement accounts, whether it be your 457, whether it be IRAs, maybe it's spousal 401ks, whatever it might be, but they've got an extra 220,000 sitting around somewhere that's going to help them supplement their retirement. So then we break it down to having 3 buckets of money, and a lot of this is really based to help with emotion in retirement, just being a psychological help in retirement when the market's doing the things that it's going to do. I mean, if you're in retirement for 25, 30 years, you're going to see several of the things that we're experiencing this year in the stock market. So you've got to be able to withstand it. Okay. So in this short-term bucket, and I can give you time and time again how we're dealing with this with clients right now. The short-term bucket is all about income. Income today. I can't tell you how lucky you are to have a benefit called your pension. Lilly, Rolls-Royce, all these companies have eliminated the pension because it's such a good benefit. But as a firefighter, you're going to have a pension which is worth more than $1 million. Okay, so in this example, that's $5,000 a month. Chris said $60,000 a year. We're going to break it down into monthly. That's $5,000 a month. You still need the same $7,000, so we've got to generate that income from somewhere besides pension. It might be spousal social security. Chris used the example of $8,000, which is roughly $700 a month. Okay, so this is $5,700. As you know, we need $7,000, so we need to use our investments to generate an extra $1,300 a month, which in Chris's example was $16,000, which again was 4% of your $400,000. Okay, so these added up is your $7,000 a month. I'm telling you right now, this is massively important. So if you're taking notes, take notes right here. This bucket right here. Let me give you a little history of the stock market. The stock market has never gone down and not recovered within 49 months, which is 4 years. Okay. So what that means is that if we believe in the stock market outside of maybe the Great Depression, that means as long as we have 4 years of income sitting on the sideline and it's something conservative that we can draw our income from, then times like now when the market's been down, the Dow's down 20 to 25%, the S&P the same, the NASDAQ's over 30% down for the year. We don't have to get emotional and make bad decisions with our money. So what we do is we plug 1 to 4 years of income into this short-term bucket of money where we're going to be ultra conservative with it, where we're going to get anywhere from 0 to 3%. And there's CDs out there right now getting 3%. So we can plug 4 years of income into this short-term bucket, knowing that it's going to be there regardless of what the market does, goes up or down. For our example, and I know this is a lot of math, but I think if we can lay this out, for our example, we need $1,300 a month for 4 years. So that's $1,300 times 12 times 4, which is $64,000 that we're going to plug into this short-term bucket that will not go down. Will not go down. We know our income's solved regardless of what happens in the world. Okay? So what that allows us to do is have these other buckets. This mid bucket that's going to be roughly our 5 to 15 year bucket. Because, again, if we believe in history, which history typically repeats itself, or we could even say always repeats itself, we need to put about $160,000 into this middle bucket. Okay? And we're going to shoot for a moderate type of allocation. So we're going to shoot again for 5 to 7% return. There's things out there that are pretty easy to find on average to get 5 to 7% return.
So now, how did you get to $160,000 in this moderate bucket?
Good question. So in this moderate bucket, if we know that we've got a time horizon of basically 15 years, but we need income for 10 years, we took the $16,000 a year for 10 years and we plugged it into this bucket. Okay. Now this is
so the first 15 years of retirement is handled right here.
It's handled. It's been solved. And we're going to get some return. So we're going to be able to increase our income with inflation, which is important, right? The cost of goods goes up. We're going to be okay because the cost of our income will go up with inflation as well. This bucket, though, is going to go up and down. right? Like if you are invested in the stock market today, you've felt the market go down this year. You just have. There hasn't been anywhere to hide. I don't care if you've been in bonds, equities, mutual funds, whatever. But we know that we've got a time horizon that's a little bit longer. So eventually it will go up. As this starts to go up, we'll refill our short-term bucket where this becomes maybe a 2 to 5 year bucket, a 3 to 6 year bucket. Okay, so we're going to keep filling that bucket up because we don't know when bad things are going to happen. But we know we're going to shoot for a 5 to 7% return. Over here in the long-term bucket, this is our long-term bucket. We don't need it for 15 plus years, but we know that we need it to be around and we need to make our money last because longevity, really, one of the largest risks that we have in retirement right now is longevity. With all the medications and things that we're discovering in the medicine world, we're living longer nowadays, and you can find that statistically. I know firemen think that that's not the case, but we can't plan for a short life expectancy, right? You want to plan for longer. So what we'll do here is we have $176,000 left. You guys, I'm 37 years old. You can be my age again from a risk tolerance standpoint because you have a 15-year time horizon. So we'll be aggressive where we try to find things that are going to get an 8 to 10% average rate of return. The S&P 500 over 30 years averages around 9.5 to 10%. We can absolutely find that, right? So if you understand the rule of 72, the rule of 72 tells us that if we get 7.2% rate of return on average for 10 years, then it'll double every 10 years. So if this 176 doubles in the first 10 years, and I'll just do easy math, that turns into almost 350, or does turn into 350,000. Then that 350,000, if we have a little bit more time horizon, can turn into 500 or even more, $700,000 if we can let it, sit and cook. And this is so important. And where I've gotten to see this, really the last 2 years, we've gotten to see this a lot. March of 2020, COVID happened. We thought the market was going to go to zero. In March, it was one of the worst months that we've seen in the stock market. If you got emotional, your income wasn't solved, you pulled your money out of the market, bang, April happened. April was one of the best Aprils we've ever had in the stock market. We've seen where it's gone from there. And then this year, we've been dealing with all sorts of bad news. But we haven't had one retiree client call us and is worried about income because we've had it solved.
So what would you say to the soon-to-be retiree that has seen their portfolio get crushed so far this year, and they're thinking, I'm going to be pulling retirement income from this in a year or two. Should I move it all conservative? That way I know it's going to be there.
I think if you would feel like maybe that makes sense, right? But if you're going to do that without truly a plan, then not only do you have to guess right to get out, you have to guess right to get back in. And there's a damn good chance you're going to not guess right on one or the other, and probably both. So I would think that and you're taking as much risk by doing that from an inflation standpoint, than if you put together a plan, and stick to the plan and let the market do what it does and not try to control the things you can't control.
That's one of the biggest things we work with our clients on, where not only is it important to not take unnecessary risk, you also don't want to take too little risk because it can be equally as detrimental. So now we're going to get into asset location. So Greg just talked about allocation, how much risk you're taking with your investments. Next, we're going to get into your asset location. Where are you actually saving? What types of accounts are you saving in to optimize taxes in retirement? Because there are a lot of things that can be done just by making little tweaks regarding where you're actually saving. So something we see a lot is that firefighter retirees have this first bucket handled. This is a pre-tax bucket. So if you're saving in your 457 pre-tax, that means you're getting a tax deduction now, and when you pull that money out in retirement, you'll be taxed on it then. Drop funds are all pre-tax. Obviously, a pension's taxable, Social Security's taxable. So a lot of firefighter retirees are in a fortunate situation when we have an above average amount of taxable income in retirement, but then we're saving all pre-tax. And so Greg talked about lifeboats earlier. We've got this one lifeboat, one giant lifeboat, one big lever to pull. And there's not a lot we can do to optimize taxes in retirement because everything's taxable. There's still a lot we can do for that retiree. But one of the most common things we're doing is working on the second bucket, which is Roth or post-tax. So the way Roth works, we pay the tax on that money now. It goes into the Roth IRA or into your Roth 457 and doesn't get taxed again. So it can grow forever tax-free, and Uncle Sam doesn't have a stake in it any longer. The third bucket is brokerage. A brokerage account is a normal investment account that doesn't have some of the tax advantages of a pre-tax retirement account or a Roth retirement account. But the benefits are you can access it before you're 59 and a half, and we're working with long-term capital gains instead of ordinary income. So when you pull from a pre-tax account, most of us are in an ordinary income tax bracket of 22% or maybe 24%. It's that tax rate. A long-term capital gain in that exact same tax rate is 15%. So there are a lot of things we can do to optimize tax liability in retirement, and I'll give an example of that. The 12% tax bracket in 2022 was up to $83,550. So the pension fills up a lot of that tax bracket, any Social Security fills it up, and maybe we take it from pre-tax accounts up until the top of this tax bracket. Again, a lot of us are paying taxes right now while we're working at 22% or 24%. And so I like being taxed at 12% in retirement. If we need anything over that, that's the biggest jump in the entire tax code. Anything over $83,550 jumps up to 22%. Your tax rate almost doubles on that next chunk of money. And so maybe we pull that from Roth because it's not taxed at all. Another thing we can do is when a retiree's in the 12% tax bracket, these long-term capital gains that are normally taxed at 15% are taxed at 0%. So if I like being taxed at 12%, I definitely like not paying taxes. And by building these buckets out, I know we've got quite a few clients on the call too, so hopefully this is a refresher for some of the things we're building out in your personal financial plans. By building these things out, even if you're a couple of years from retirement, there are so many things we could do to save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over hopefully a long and healthy retirement.
Chris, I'm sitting here thinking about an analogy, right? We've got firemen on the call here, or firefighters on the call, and one of the things I was sitting here and thinking is like, if my dad, brother, you, everybody on the call was to go into a burning building and they only were allowed to take one tool. I can't imagine you can do your job with one tool, right? If you had an axe, are you putting out a fire at the most efficient way possible with just an axe?
No, definitely not. That's support for all you truck guys on the call too. Axes don't put out fires.
I'll let you jab it down on that. But so when you think about your retirement, if we can have more tools to be the most efficient as possible, you can save literally tens of thousands, if not $100,000 of taxes just by having enough tools in your tool belt to be as efficient as possible in retirement. And that might be a cheesy or terrible analogy, but I was just thinking about that. It's like, if you want to do the best that you can do, you need to have all the tools to be efficient.
Yeah, even I guess to further that analogy, we don't show up to a house on fire and just wing it for the most part, right? You've been trained in the academy. We've got standard operating procedures. Hopefully you discuss the game plan as a crew. And the same thing is true in our financial lives. It is totally unnecessary to wing it because even though it can feel complicated, we're talking about 3 buckets here. It really is pretty simple to put a plan in place. And just like on the fire ground where, guys will say no 2 burning buildings are the same. So we'll figure it out when we get there. 9 times out of 10, we're doing similar things with similar tools and we've got the ability to call an audible if conditions change. So obviously believe in the importance of having a plan and then the ability to adjust it as you go based on what's happening in your life and in the market and in the world as a whole. The last thing we want to touch on before we get to some questions here is what it looks like to work with a financial advisor. I think that's something we kind of take for granted since we're doing it all the time. So we want to be clear about what that relationship even looks like. The first thing we do for any potential client is we schedule a get to know you call, where we just hop on a quick, usually 20-30 minute informal phone call and just kind of talk through some big picture stuff. It's important to us that any client we bring on is a good fit for the firm and that we're a good fit for them. And usually in that call, we can leave with 3 or 4 even little action items that can have a dramatic impact when it comes to someone's trajectory towards retirement. If we decide to work together, we send you our pre-meeting checklist, which is a 1-pager that lists everything from assets, investment account statements. So looking at, we want to see your 457 allocation, and if your spouse has a 401k, looking at all those funds, making sure you're taking the right amount of risk, and making sure that you're on track and that your investments are complementing each other. We're looking at debts, we're looking at insurance, and essentially it's our job to optimize literally everything that can be optimized in your financial life. And we do that in our first meeting. I think of it as a financial size up where literally we talk straight through that checklist. We write everything out on a whiteboard just like this. And just like, when we size up a building on fire, we're given, what we got, what we need, and then we're establishing a plan. And we do the exact same thing. What do you have right now? What's the next step? And what's our plan to get there? And then we meet with our clients every single year, to adjust that plan as needed and make sure they're on track to retire on time and on their terms. So we'll be getting to questions here shortly, so keep them coming in the chat. I wanted to pull up for anybody that's interested. I'll share this QR code for anybody that's tech savvy enough to use it, or here's my contact, firefighterfinancialadvisor.com. We're offering, so we use a software called Riskalyze, where we can input a portfolio and it'll spit out a risk score. And that risk score is on a scale from 1 to 99, 1 being you're sitting all in cash, 99 being that you're holding a couple volatile individual positions. It takes us 10-15 minutes to do, and that's something we'll do for free. Anybody on this call, if you're curious about how much risk you're actually taking with your investments, we're glad to do that for anyone. Or if you want to schedule a financial size up, that get to know you call, just fill out the contact form. There's a drop down menu where you can select either. So I'm going to keep this up for another 10 seconds. Feel free to take a picture of it.
So if they're on their phone, they screenshot it, and then what?
Yep. So you can scan it with your phone's camera, or just go to the URL there, firefighterfinancialadvisor.com. I'm going to back out of here, and we'll start taking questions. So just throw them in the chat there. We'll make sure we get to all of them. Aaron, what's up, man? Aaron asks, what do you see as the benefit of pre versus post-tax 457 Roth? Depending on who services your 457, you can borrow 50% of contributions, not growth. For them, it's their 457 Roth that they can borrow against. Can you touch on FSA and HSA as investment opportunities and structure? Yep. So the post-tax of the 457 is this exactly. So again, most people are saving pre-tax, and so when they pull from it in retirement, it's all taxable. By saving in Roth, we're able to build these pots of money that we can pull from to do the tax optimization we talked about based on your tax bracket in retirement. So that is absolutely one of the most powerful things, and probably the number one thing that we're doing with our firefighter clients is building up this Roth. bucket and the brokerage bucket, just so that we have some options regarding taxes when you do retire.
So touch on in 2026, what do we know tax rates are going to do?
Yeah, so 2026, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts sunset. So we know for a fact that tax rates are going to increase. We know that the 12% bracket is going to go back to being the 15% tax bracket. In the 22% tax bracket is going to go back to being the 25% tax bracket. So the next, 3 years and 3 months, we're paying taxes at a known discount, which we believe is a real opportunity for a lot of people, depending on where your income is, to prioritize Roth.
And I think even to add on that, not only are we getting a discount from a tax standpoint, we're getting a discount from an investment standpoint. So if we're going to recover, which I truly believe we will, sooner than later, even though it's not going to be soon enough, all that growth in your Roth is tax-free, and that is so powerful as a tool when we get into retirement, because we can really play the tax game if you plan accordingly. If you go into retirement small and have no Roth money, I mean, it's a little harder to play that game. So if you plan accordingly, you really can.
That's a great point. And not to take your question too far down the rabbit hole, Aaron, but for anybody that's got an old retirement account, maybe it's an old 457 from a different fire department, maybe your spouse has an old 401k. We're doing a lot of Roth conversions right now, where basically we can take a chunk of this pre-tax bucket, pay the tax on it this year while we're paying at a known discount, and convert it to Roth. And to Greg's point, if this is kind of a little chart of what the stock market's done, and we're right here, not only does that minimize the taxes we're paying when we convert from pre-tax to Roth, but whenever the market recovers, all that growth is going to be in an account that is tax-free. So it's a really powerful opportunity for a lot of people right now. FSA versus HSA. An FSA is a flex spending account. HSA is a health savings account. They frequently get confused with each other. An FSA has the whole use it or lose it rule on medical expenses, where your HSA is your money, and you can actually invest it. And that's another big thing we're doing, where retirees' health expenses are by far the number one thing that keep firefighters working longer than they want to. And so by saving your HSA dollars, if your fire department has a PEP, getting money into the PEP, making sure it's invested, and growing it as part of your retirement plan can make it, where you look up at age 52 or 55 or whatever it might be, and you've got the money there to pay for the retiree's health insurance to get you to 65, which is Medicare age.
We got a couple of them.
So the pension divorce rule. How do you make up the difference in what bucket? So I assume you're talking about, after being married for so long, where a former spouse gets part of your pension. And that would be in the very first bucket that Greg talked about. That pension, for the most part, is guaranteed income. And so, if your pension benefit is reduced, the amount of money that we would have in that short-term bucket, we would want to increase, with safe investments, since you'll have less coming in from your pension benefit.
But the only way you can make it up is saving while you can, right?
Sure.
Like if you're going to lose, I don't know the numbers, but if you're going to lose $1,500 to your spouse, you got to make that up somewhere. So it's probably going to be over saving us several years.
Sure.
I mean, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's certainly something to plan for. At separation or retirement of employment, can you pull money from your 457 even if you're younger than 55? Yeah, so Aaron, you're giving me softballs here, and I appreciate it. The 457, we call it a retirement account, but it's technically deferred compensation. So once you separate from service, you can pull money from your pre-tax 457. The one difference with a Roth 457, and to be clear, we see clients with some confusion that they think you can just have one Roth. You could have a Roth 457. You can have a Roth IRA. There are a couple ways to be saving post-tax. but the earnings on the 457, in the Roth side of it, you want to be 59.5. So you don't have to pay taxes on that money, but there's no penalty to take it like a normal retirement account where a 401k, you want to be 59.5 to pull from it.
So the answer is yes, though, on just a regular 457.
The answer is yes. You can pull money from your 457 even if you're younger than 55.
And that's because of your guys' occupation.
It's because it's deferred compensation.
Oh, because it's a 457. Yeah, I got you.
Yep. Good stuff. Kevin asks, how does the brokerage tax rate go from 15% to 0%? Good question. So it's all based on your taxable income. So if you're under this $83,550 of taxable income, any capital gain is at that 0% tax rate. Above that, above 83,000, and I forget where the top limit of the 15% bracket when it comes to long-term capital gains is. It's a ways up there. Long-term capital gains are taxed at 15%.
I think it's like 450 grand.
Somewhere, yeah, above 450 grand, somewhere in that ballpark. Long-term capital gains are taxed at 20%. So there's a tax advantage there too, where if you're making $400,000 a year, your ordinary income rate is way up there, in the 30-some% range, where you're just paying 15% in long-term capital gains. Any other questions? All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining us. I'll put that contact form back up here. Also, the email with the webinar link, that goes straight to my personal email. So if anybody has questions specific to you and your family, feel free to send it directly to me. We appreciate you guys making some time on this lovely Tuesday evening.